is the artificial appearance of age or use. But more important than that is why to weather. The big thing in cinema that set Star Wars over Star Trek was that it was a lived-in universe. It was dirty, it was gritty, it was weathered, it was believable. It had a history. And so when you look at Star Trek's perfect tinfoil walls and freshly cast plastic pieces, you subliminally got the message that it was untested, that it was fresh, and you kind of discount it internally because of that. When you weather something properly, you are giving a visual snapshot image of a history. You're telling its story. Specifically with droids in the Star Wars universe, you've got two sets of droids. You've got Astromechs and Agromechs. Don't go aggro on me. And the Astromechs are more meant for use in space, on space stations, in fighters, and on carriers. The Agromechs would more be used on planets, things like the R4 and the R5. Whereas things like the R2 and the R3 were more specifically only in space. The way that R2 is weathered is because he's going to have a lot of brown tones in him. He spent a lot more time on planet than in space. If you go back and look at some of the movies, the way that the space robots are weathered, it's more space dust. It's environment. It's lots of silvers, blacks, grays. It's not organic material. You'd find colors like this on farms or ground. In space, you can have more blacks and stuff. In swamps or in forests, you're going to have even more peat. So you're going to introduce some greens or even some blacks to where that stuff is built up. We're going to weather this as R2-D2. And the three colors we're going to use are raw umber, raw sienna, and burnt sienna. And those are all three shades of brown, but they have different, there's a bit more black in umbers and a bit more reds in siennas. And they're going to build up rather nicely. The tools you need, of course, is paint, these colors, acrylic paint. You don't want to use oils because you're not going to be able to work with them. You can use acrylics. You can use temperas, but they don't act quite so nice as acrylics do. Brushes, I like a mid-sized white chip brush and a flat detail brush. There are different methods for specifying very specific certain small details and effects, but as far as an overall weathering a droid, we're going to use two kinds of techniques. The first is called a wash, and the other is called a dry brush. And they are pretty much exactly what they sound like. I'm going to start with the back so that you guys don't freak out when I do this. And we're going to grab some of this. And we're going to start with raw sienna. And with R2-D2 specifically, you have to remember that as much as we think about him and personify him as a character, he's a piece of industrial equipment. He was a tractor. He was every bit as useful and as useless as those. So he's going to build up grime in a way that a person or even a soldier wouldn't, that's taking care of their own armor or personnel. The best that R2 is going to get, unless he's destroyed and rebuilt, is simply some crew hand is going to wipe him down and move on to the next thing. So when you weather him, it is we're going to be building up dirt and washing it away to where we're cleaning him just good enough, just enough. Aside from assigning a background or a story to your droid through weathering, you're also causing the details to stand out. If you look, I know some of you guys, you have completely unweathered, perfect museum piece droids. I'm looking at you. And you'll notice in real life, they look gorgeous. but you'll find a lot of times when people take pictures in the flash, all that detail work, all those panels wash out. What you get when you weather is the buildup of grime in those crevices that cause those to become details that stay. When you get back over to the shop or to the hotel, you can look at my droid. He looks really heavily weathered in real life, but he takes gorgeous pictures. Even with flash, all of those panels stay, and they just look appropriate at that point. And a lot of people's memory of your droid will be through their pictures, and so that's something to think about as you go out. If you're wanting to get involved with any kind of publicity for yourself as far as events or things you're going out to do, people are going to be looking at pictures of your droid and viewing your work by those pictures, not by just a quick chance that they get to see it in real life. And so a lot of that, a lot of your work can be boosted or promoted through a really good weathering. As far as this character, we're going to start like this, and what we're going to be doing is a wash. And a wash is where you take your paint, we're going to apply it right to the brush, and we are just going to slime it. Now, acrylic paint will dry. It will reactivate, reliquefy with water. And so we're going to work in small manageable sections. So we're not going to completely cover the entire droid, but we're going to be doing a back and forth of basically mudding and wiping. And you'll see how, got a panel that we missed, but you'll see how as this builds up, these things will really start to stand out. So I've got the paint, got my medium chip brush, got some water. You want to have a sprayer if you can, not a garden hose, but just something that you can control the amount of water that goes on. And with this, you'll be able to more heavily weather your droid or remove it as you want to back it off to a point that you're happy with. So because we're applying this directly to the droid, don't be afraid once you put the paint on there. Not only is it acrylic, it'll wash off. Even if you terribly screw it up, with enough water, you can wash it off. I want to take a note to say that as far as a clear coat, when you get to the point where you are painted, you can weather before or after your clear coat for a different effect. If you weather your droid and then clear coat over it, then you've sealed in your weathering. And that's great. It's going to stay just like it is for as long as the clear coat lasts. But then also, if you go ahead and clear coat and then weather on top of that, as you do more events, your droid will naturally age. There's going to be times where you've accidentally walked too close to a sprinkler or got caught in a real light drizzle as it blew through a doorway, or you were cleaning up and a little bit of water dripped down on him or something. All of that stuff continues to age him in the same way that your aluminum dome, you've got it all nice and shiny, but after so many events and so many hands and body parts touching him, it'll develop that real nice dull patina that we think of when we think of R2-D2 as an in-use manufactured robot. So I'm gonna, this right here, right on there, and we'll, I'm right-handed, so I'm gonna kind of do this in front of the camera. And what you want to do is pack it down in there, because what you want, as we're going to wash it away, what you want is for what's down in there to stay around edges and especially down in cracks. That's going to give your body panels a depth that they didn't have before. Oh, remember I go. So this will dry if we let it sit too long. There we go. So I'm going to mist it like this, just a little bit, and I'm going to wipe it down. And remember, I'm going to do a little role playing as I wipe it down. R2 just came back from God knows what, and you are right now just a crew member. You've just been assigned to take a rag and go wipe that thing off and get back to your next thing. And so you don't want to be meticulous. The fun thing about weathering is that you've spent so much time working so meticulously on making a handmade piece look like a machined manufactured piece that now you get to do something a little bit more organic. And so there's a lot of natural buildup. So when you weather, and then when you come back and you wipe, as I sprayed it, we're going to wipe it down. That's the wash. We don't want to come back and really finely define all those things. We just want to wipe. Oh, and there they go. I can set those down because they'll fall again. Now remember, the R2 in the movies was a lot more yellowy, that kind of pukey color, because that showed up as a nice white on screen. But when we paint them that satin white, because in real life, that's our real life approximation to what we expected to see on screen. So as you weather, you're going to get that shifting of tones. And you saw how heavily I weathered it. And then when I come back, see that sudden difference there? See how it suddenly took on a new character. And that's something that, yeah, you're assigning mentally, but that comes from experience, life, in the same way that we anthropomorphize the robot with human qualities. We look at a good weathering, and we, through our life experiences, say that has a story to tell. Picture an R3 that's mostly used in space, or especially an Imperial droid that's only kept on something like the Death Star. They're meticulously maintained. They're not going to have weathering with this kind of natural palette. If you were to see an Imperial droid with a palette more like this, it would catch you. You'd stop and you'd say, there's something else to be known about that droid. There's something else to be had. That droid's been through something else that sets it apart from the standard fare that you're going to find on the Death Star. And so you saw how, as I wipe away, how it takes it more back toward white, but not too much. So if I turn it like this, and see what I haven't weathered here and what I did, and that difference, when you're doing your initial wash, it's okay to go any direction, but as you finalize that wash, go down. Picture airplanes, picture Navy boats, picture rust spots on your car if you live anywhere north of the Mason-Dixon line. All of that drippage, even if R2 came in and a tech ran over with a wet sponge and washed him off real quick and took off, he didn't get every last speck of dust. So what's left is going to drip and it's going to dry. Let me work through this back door real quick. And I like to start weathering with the back door, not because I'm not looking forward to the front. It's that every time you get into something, you've got to kind of get into it. This is a good practice piece on your droid that you can screw around with, you can take all the way back to, and you don't feel like you've done anything permanent or that you're unsatisfied with to the front. So we'll come over here again. Same thing. I heard that, Steel. Again, I'm packing that color, that grit and grime and gathered dirt down into those cracks, those seams, and also around these recessed hinges, or these recessed panels. You don't want to forget those, because they will stand out like a sore thumb. They will be a white halo around your nice weathering that will be totally obvious. And as humans, we like to see patterns, and when we see a break in that pattern, it's going to totally ruin your effect, the effect of the viewer. Instead of him being something natural, it's then becomes something artificial. Again, just an initial wipe down. I should say a note about protection. Nitrile gloves are good to wear, especially if you're doing any kind of anything caustic. Tempera paint, or I'm sorry, not tempera, acrylic is the least reactive or toxic of any of the paints. Having done other painting before, if I'm doing like etching or something like that, I always wear gloves and protection. But for some reason, when I weather, I like the connection that not wearing gloves gives me, and that's something specific to me. I'm going to end up with paint all over my hands, and probably all over my clothes. But what that gives me is a how do I say it? An intimate connection with the prop that I'm working with. Whenever it's all right. Whenever you're as you know, whenever you just from this prop, whenever you make something and put a lot of heart into it, somehow it shows. When you've done a really good job, you've spent your time, you've toiled over this thing, and it's complete. It's not just another Buick that rolled off the lot. There's something special that's imbued to it that just stays with it. And so when I weather, I don't like to wear gloves. Again, I did that initial wash, and now I'm wiping downward. Now, if I don't like this much, and this is going to show up real light on a camera. In real life, this is more appropriate Tatooine. If you want to back up off of that even, again with the acrylic, just spray it down. And just take off a bit more. Let me say that when you're doing your body painting, that can affect your paint job. If you're painting when the humidity is high, your paint job on your body will develop a lot of little dimples and divots in it. And then when you go to weather, the same way that this is staying in here, it's going to stay in there. And so you want to be mindful of that when you do your body paint job, because the quality of that paint job will be affecting your weathering as well. All right, now what I've got here from the back door is a really good wash from about here to here. With R2 doing so much on the surface of planets, he's going to be driving through a lot of stuff, and especially as stuff drains down, it's going to gather, and that's where the other colors come in. The lightest of these, the raw sienna, that's a nice light tannish kind of color. The burnt sienna, it's a little bit more red, and that's going to signify these kind of stages of dryness or stages of crud built up. This stuff is the stuff that's the thinnest. You're going to build up to this, and in your dark recesses, not of your heart, but of places down in here, up under here, under the shoulder, on the shoulder, back behind the shoulder details that are on there. That is a great place to use the raw umber, because it doesn't have a lot of color in it. It's got just enough earth tone to be organic, but it's going to allow your details to pop out and just act as a backdrop behind them. I'm not going to wash the brush out. That constant building is just going to wipe away and build and build and build. Mostly what's going to be left is the glob that I put on there, but anything of the 3 colors that's left on there is inconsequential. Now, I want to, even though I'm starting right here, I still want to blend these because I don't want 3 distinct regions on the droid, but I do want the appearance of accumulation. So I'm just going to bring some of that back up. And another rinse. It's yeah, it's a DNA wash. Well, it's because I have millions of, you know what? Normally, yeah, people are sweating it about this point. Some of us have been driving droids for years and never gotten here. No, I'm serious. There's no shame in it. It is, especially with R2-D2, there are so many instances where he was clean or dirty or rebuilt or just completely filled with crap that you can pick any scene or film and say, I did my droid from that scene or that scene or that scene. Again, what you see me doing is adding more water to back it off. The acrylic will be removed by the water and the scrubbing. There you go. And again, every time you finish, just go down. You always want any errant lines, you want down. You don't want it to look like a baby got in his diaper and just kind of rubbed it around on there. So no circular motions or anything like that. No scrubbing sideways, because life doesn't happen like that. This is gravity. At this point, I'm going to move down to the raw umber. And this is going to be your most sparing color, because it's only going to be where the most has happened, the most has accumulated. It's also dark, so it's a good color to go in your aluminum pieces, because as light shines on them, you don't get a lot of color reflecting inside of your pieces. You just get definition. You get clear lines and recesses, and but not a ton of color throughout. So I hope you can already see how that's so much more brown. I'll stop right there with that. And again, don't work in tiny little sections. Don't say, I'm doing this panel and then I'm moving on to this one. You can work in general regions, but always overlap when you come back to it. Because if I've got stuff on my rag here and I end up, leaving something like that, that's a real organic thing that you're not going to artificially replicate as easily as if it were just an accident. You can't put so much thought into those stray marks. But things like that, again, with weathering telling a story, they really give a lot of intrigue to whatever this droid's history has been, whatever led to this or that. A lot of times you see the guys, they'll either have nothing on the front, they'll have the restraining bolt, or the restraining bolt will not be there, and there will be a spot right there that's clear where the restraining bolt would have been, but some weathering around the outside of it. You see that circle, but you also see the weathering. The absence of that draws your eye to it. That says something happened in this droid's history that brought that about. Once I get in here, there we go. If you can see in that coin return, see all in here now? You just get a lot of really good definition to those lines and those corners. And when you take, especially your unpainted aluminum pieces, they will just shine. They'll just turn pure white. In a photograph, the same color as this. You lose all definition. And so when you've got a little bit of aging and a little bit of dirt around the edges, then you bring all those shapes back into the image. So let me, all right. Now that I've got that where it is, let me spin the droid around a couple times and let you look at it. The unfinished front and the aged back, and just kind of get an idea of where it's going, and let your mind kind of assign what it will to the aging and the dirt and the accumulation. So there's the back. Let me get a good look. So can you see the real difference in the character of the piece now? When we talk about weathering, it's not just for droids, it's pretty much anything. If you look at Luke's Landspeeder, it had that big dent in the front. Obviously it didn't come from the factory like that, but it gets you thinking, what did he hit? I mean, was he running from sand people? Did he back end a sand crawler? Was he just fooling around? Was he drunk on spice? I have no idea, but that has a story to tell. If you look at science fiction guns or fantasy swords, if you see all those little points of wear, all those dings and scratches, and where the paint's been rubbed off, and sometimes just slashed or cut or paint chipping. It's got a history. It's got something that it's done in the past. If Conan walks out and he's got just this pure, pristine, clean sword, you take it less seriously. It's untested. It's not been through any kind of life, and so it doesn't bring anything to the table. And that's why immediately in those scenes in Tatooine in the movies, you connected with it, because that was at some point every one of our childhood, some sand pit that we found somewhere that we were digging in, and there's, or some dirt pile somewhere. We came home looking like those droids, and there's something that you internalize from a world that's lived in and that's weathered. I'm gonna leave that, and I'm gonna move to, there's a piece of styrofoam in here, but I'm gonna move to the leg. As I was talking about, this raw umber, it'll be great back in here. It's not the darkest dirt is the dirt that doesn't have any more organicness to it. It's just dust. It's accumulation. It's not like red Georgia clay. It's just like the stuff that gathers up underneath your corner of your house under a cupboard or something. It's just leftover. And just like you saw back there, it does create a real nice backdrop. I'm going to use, actually, I want to keep that one. I'm going to use one of the smaller brushes I have to get down in there. Not because it's a detailing piece, it's just easier to reach back there. Making sure when you weather to get into these hard to reach places, just to leave paint is important, because that's the place where if he was dunked or soaked or splashed, or just a dust storm blew through, those are the places where it is going to be left. If you've got real nice weathering all over here, but back in there it's pure white, it's obvious that you skipped something, that you missed it. So I'm getting back there with this, but I'm not going over the outside of that, because I'm going to do that with a little bit more of the colorful stuff. This is just the leftover dirt. And I can't really reach in there to wipe, but I can spray a couple sprays and let it gather however it wants. Because that, again, that organic element of just nature having its way with the machine says that it's been around, that it's had some time out in the open, and that it's seen some stuff in its lifetime. And there we go. If you can see that now it's not the real nice paint that I had. Let me scoot up a little bit. Go ahead and look. Now it's not the real nice paint that I had. It's a very crummy fill, which is exactly like, I guarantee you a lot of times you're constantly wiping off your dashboard on your car, but the top of the post of your steering column, every once in a while you look down and it's just covered in dust, and you reach up there, it's because it's all accumulated there, and it's just crappy. It's not got any kind of any pattern to it. It's not got any reason to the way it's laid down or gathered. It's just, you might have missed it, you might have gone over it. As you open the door, the wind pulls some of it off, and you spill fry dust on it sometimes. And so that back there, you see most of it's washed away, but especially, and let me let you look close, especially down around that hydraulic, you can see that it is just really built up and just ground in. So let me show my at-home audience. See, what we've got there is not a really nice paint job in there. It's just a natural gathering of dirt wherever it was going to sit. Okay. All right, same thing. I lost my paintbrush. There it is. I'm going to do the same thing real quick behind these buttons, and I'm also going to do this in the little holes in the buttons. Every little crack and detail is important when you're weathering. Even your dome. It'll naturally age as people come up and hug it and kiss it and slap it, and you Clorox it every 5 events, hopefully, because sometimes people come up and like girls want to kiss. I'm like, no, don't put your lips on that. Don't. So, but you'll weathering your dome. The little the little cracks around each of the dome panels, that's a great place to add some weathering. You don't have to make his dome all muddy or oily or anything. You don't even have to have that much left over on the dome itself. But just getting some dirt down in the cracks, it'll tie them together. So don't be afraid to do that. While I'm doing this, any questions so far? Well, that means I have to fill up the time then. And what I'm doing here with the raw umber, I'm only doing it first on here because I've got a recess that I want it to stay in. For most of these open panels, I work from light to dark. Again, not in specific regions. Be sure to wash them all the way back and forth. But as you've applied them lower and lower and lower, they kind of stay and settle. So you get that gradual accumulation of dirt. With these, this represents an old accumulation, even though it's up high, simply because it's hard to reach. I'm going to give a couple sprays there, and I'm going to wipe it off of anything that is exposed, because see what that brings back out? Even on your nice metal pieces, you want to get it all in there. Now that I've got the raw umber in there, I'm going to come back to a real general wash with the burnt sienna first up on top. I'm going to The shoulder hub has a lot of angles. Make sure that you get paint all down in there, because again, the universe doesn't miss anywhere. It's going to gather everywhere. And if you don't imitate that, it's going to be obvious that it's artificial dirt. And artificial dirt on a droid is okay. If you're putting it on your Jeep, you're a tool. I'm just putting that out there. And again, this is that role playing of I'm just a guy on a starship doing my job. And there we go, check that out. See that grit? There's a lot of character there. There's a lot of story to be told, some history that is not a fresh off the line droid. You can, and the great thing about working with acrylic is with enough water and just getting in there even with a Q-tip, you can get just about all of it off. So put it on and then work it back until you're happy with it. It depends on how heavy you want your droid weathered. And that is nothing but a personal choice, as long as you're not trying to imitate a specific scene. The droid from the R2 from the ceremony at the end of episode 4 wouldn't go well standing on Dagobah. He's completely out of place. He's got to fit the environment. And when he left, he's still grumpy and grimy and get a little bit more of the burnt sienna and just kind of work it around at the lower stages. And it doesn't matter that I've got smears everywhere, or that, you know, I got out of my quadrant that I'm working on, because all this is doing is very quickly imitating the slow gathering of dirt and grime in a single sit-down paint job. And there we go. Let me let you look at down in this crack versus that side. You can see that difference of texture. What time is it? 1:14. All right. The other, real quick before I just get into some general weathering, the other technique, I just realized I forgot my silver paint out there. The other technique for weathering is dry brushing, and that is a good technique for adding edge wear along edges. If you got pieces that aren't metal, that's okay, because getting some silver paint, you get just a little bit on there, and come over here and just wipe and wipe and wipe on something until it's almost gone. And then you come back and you just barely touch along it. And that's why you use that flat brush. No, we're not allowed to do that.
Actually, we're going to start sanding, it's going to get loud. We didn't know how much.
Right. Well, I'm pretty much done with talking about what I'm doing. I was just going to say, because of time, I was just going to really start in on it. So that's fine. You can turn everything back on. If they want to leave it running, that's fine. But I'm just going to.
Anyone who wants to listen to you probably needs to come closer to what I'm saying.
Oh yeah. But I'm just going to like work fast through it, because at this point it's not real scientific. It's just splatter.